During the week that the presentations are posted in Manhattan and that the videos are out on YouTube, everyone in the class is expected to participate in an online discussion with comments and questions in Manhattan. There'll be a separate discussion thread for each of the presentations and its associated feedback. The presenting teams must respond to other students' comments and questions as well as mine, and we will handle that on an asynchronous basis, just as we've been doing with all of our other discussion threads. Now, during that 2-week or that 1-week period, I'm not going to be posting any other assignments for discussion forums, so this will be the class discussion for that period. Teams can assign a spokesperson or respond en masse. In other words, you can have one person do all of your postings, or you can each respond as needed. You just need to let me know how you plan to respond so I know how best to track whether you are responding, because the responses you make and the questions that you answer and the questions you ask as team members or as a team will be a portion of your grade. And here's where we get into the grading. I'm going to use a 100-point scale. 85 points will be for quality of the presentation and the content. So the core presentation is going to get you the lion's share of your grade. 15 points will be associated with participation in the follow-up discussion threads. And this isn't the participation by everybody else in the class. It's the participation by the team members. Participation by everyone else is going to be governed by the participation grade for the class. So as a student in the class who's not responding in the context of your own presentation, you'll be expected to participate in other people's presentations, and that's how you will get your participation grade for that week. During week 2, I did spend a little bit of time talking about how to prepare an effective case analysis, and those guidelines are going to be the basis for my assessment of the presentation and the content. The rest of the class will not have read your case, so be sure you lay out all the facts. You need to tell your story clearly, succinctly, but in a way that the rest of the class can understand why you're drawing the conclusions that you're drawing. And then you need to describe your analysis and the team discussions, debates that took place in the context of your preparation for the class, for the presentation. In preparing an effective case analysis, there was a nice starting outline for a presentation, and I'm going to walk through it. This is what I would expect to see as an outline for your presentation. First, you need to provide a strategic profile and case analysis purpose. Then you need to provide your situation analysis. This is the really the description of the facts. This is what's going on, the core of the facts in the case. You need to do a general environmental analysis, an industry analysis, a competitor analysis, an internal analysis, and then when you've done all of that, you need to take the facts that you've just laid out in your strategic profile, your case analysis purpose, and your situation analysis, and develop a SWOT analysis for the case. And then based on all of that information, you need to prepare your strategy formulation. You need to show what strategic alternatives your team considered. You need to describe how you evaluated those alternatives, what factors played into your thinking, what debates you had amongst yourselves about those alternatives. Then you have to identify which alternative you've chosen. That's your recommendation. That's going to be a critical element of your case analysis. And then you're going to have to talk about how you take that alternative and how you're going to implement it as a strategy. You're going to have to identify specific action items. Are there financial steps that need to be taken? Are there operational steps that need to be taken? Do you need to think about new management, new human resources plans? Do you need to think about new capital sources or alternative capital sources? So those are all the things that could be potential action items. You need to develop those into an action plan which identifies when and how you would implement those action items. And then from there, this is just an outline. So if you put all that together, that's kind of the core of a good presentation. That said, it's just a starting point. You may have some creative ideas and thoughts about how to enhance your team presentation. And more important, each of the cases that you're going to be reviewing is slightly different. And this framework may not be absolutely perfect for the facts of your case. I think it'll work as a general rule for everybody, but if you feel the need, please add information or adjust information. If you're not including one of these elements, and there's a good reason not to, just say so. Say, for example, I don't think it's appropriate to do a competitor analysis for the following reasons. One possibility might be that you don't believe that a competitor analysis is appropriate because you're approaching this from a blue ocean perspective. And and as I've said in my both online comments and in my recap, I'm going to be covering a little bit about blue ocean strategy. And if you apply blue ocean strategy, some of these elements may not be applicable, but you need to explain why, or explain in the alternative how you would have gone about things had you applied this more traditional strategic framework. A couple other comments. First, team members will be expected to prepare 2 peer evaluations for their colleagues. One's going to be in the mid-semester and one's going to be semester end. Both forms are going to be available in the assignment section of Manhattan, so you won't have any trouble finding them, hopefully. If you do, let me know. The mid-semester evaluation will not be used for grading purposes. That's not why I want to use it. It will be shared amongst the team, so it's not confidential. It's really meant to be a feedback document that you can use amongst yourselves. So it's going to be focused on issues that might help you in the context of your team preparation and your team discussions. If there are issues of concern, I'm hoping you'll use this as a vehicle to think about how to improve your communication or to resolve disputes or other concerns that may exist on the team. So it's really a chance for you to listen to the feedback and recalibrate if necessary for the remainder of the semester. The semester end peer evaluation will be confidential. In other words, no one else on the team will see it. You'll provide it back to me directly, and it will be used for grading purposes. I will not share it with anyone else on the team, but based on the feedback that I receive, I reserve the right to adjust individual team members' grades to the extent that there's a theme in any of the feedback about any team members. My hope is there won't be, and in fact you'll be expected to do a self-evaluation as part of that. So I'm hoping that everybody will be honest, and frankly I'm hoping that everybody will contribute in a meaningful way to the team so that there won't be a need to use this document for any adjustments in grading. The peer evaluation deadlines and details are posted in Manhattan, so you just need to watch what it says on Manhattan and use the peer evaluations forms when you're prompted. Another important comment, and I've said this in the syllabus a number of times, I think that deadlines are important, and I particularly think deadlines are going to be critical for this assignment. Students in the class are going to be relying on your presentations as the content for an entire week's work. And so I'm going to be pushing hard to get your presentations in a timely fashion so that in turn they can be available to the rest of the class. 25 points will be deducted from your total team score for each day that you're late in submitting the presentation. So it's absolutely essential. I hate to be punitive, and as a general rule will not be, but unless there is an extraordinarily strong reason for any delays, not just in this assignment or any other delays in terms of assignments, I'm going to be very focused on sticking to these penalties for missed deadlines. The reality is, if you were working in a company and you needed to submit a project in a time, for example, a bid where there's a bidding deadline and you miss the deadline, it can be, you could lose the job. And so I think that at this stage in your college careers, where for most of you, you're seniors, this is a capstone course of sorts. It's not unreasonable to expect deadlines to be enforced, but also with this assignment, it's also just a matter of fairness for everybody else in the class. In addition, failure by any team member to submit either peer evaluation by the listed deadlines will result in an automatic 10-point reduction to that individual's team project grade. So you could lose up to 20 points if you don't submit the peer evaluations in a timely fashion. And again, I've already talked a little bit above about why I think this is important, but fundamentally we're all relying on each team for the class content, so it's very important that we get things in time. In terms of the project team guidelines, here's some things you should be aware of. First, I've posted project team guidelines out on Manhattan. In it, I've identified the various responsibilities that you will have as individuals as you complete the project assignment. Those guidelines are intended to provide you with a framework for organizing and managing your team, and I'd absolutely encourage you to stick to the guidelines. Sometimes people think they can just kind of get together and hope everything works. By having guidelines, you can address when there is a problem as a team and address it in the context of the guidelines. Say, I had this expectation that I was going to get a particular document from a particular individual, or I expected that you were going to do this particular activity, and you can point to the guidelines in much the same way you might do a performance review or a 360 review for employees that you're working with. So I guess what I'd say is using the guidelines will probably, one, make it easier for you to organize, and two, make it easier for you to resolve problems if they exist. I also want you to prepare the team expectation agreement as outlined in the guidelines. That should be submitted to me no later than February 6th at 10 p.m. Essentially, this is your contract amongst your team in terms of how you plan to proceed with the project, who's taking on what roles, and exactly how you plan to get the work done in the context of the guidelines. So I think this is very important, and that's why I'm making it a requirement, and I would expect to see a document that everyone has acknowledged directly or indirectly that they are prepared to live by these guidelines. We're also going to be using occasional team project status checks during the semester. I think this is critical just to keep you on track. I will post more on what I want in those status updates, but generally I want to see outlines of work product and updates on the team's overall efforts. So as we get closer, I should see a pretty detailed outline in some of the later status checks. Early on it could be a very rough outline, but I want you to have some intervening deadlines that you have to meet, and more important, make sure that you're thinking about what the final product will look like as early as possible in the semester. As you know, we've got till April 24th, so I've allowed you a fairly long runway to pull this project together, but I don't want you procrastinating until the week before. I do want the team to work together and sort of build it out piece by piece. And I'm happy to meet with teams if you're struggling with issues or content. So again, if there is any problem with pulling this together, let me know. We can set up either a telephone or video conference, and I'm glad to talk with you. Or if you want to have a representative speak with me, that's fine. Although, if you are having a problem, it might be worthwhile for it to be any such meeting to be with the whole team so that everybody gets the benefit of the discussion.